In the 1940s, every chainsaw in the Pacific Northwest ran the same failing chain. It was called the scratcher chain. Its teeth were shaped like a handsaw, designed to scrape wood rather than shear it. Loggers stopped to sharpen it multiple times a day. Nearly half a working shift could disappear into filing. The machines were heavy, the cuts were slow, and the industry had accepted all of it as the permanent cost of the work. One man had not. Stories like this one are what Iron Legacy is built for. If that sounds like your kind of channel, subscribing now costs you nothing. The problem ran deeper than most people in the industry were willing to admit. The chainsaw itself was still a relatively new tool in those years. One of the steel machines, Weyerhaeuser, tested as early as 1939, weighed 145 pounds and required 2 men to carry and operate. Its guide bar ran roughly 6 feet. The technology was improving, but the chain, the one component that actually touched the wood, remained the fundamental limitation. Its teeth were straight up, shaped like a common handsaw, scratching and scraping fiber away from the cut rather than shearing through it cleanly. Some accounts placed the time lost to sharpening at nearly half of a sawyer's productive working hours, half the day, gone to a file and a vise before the real work could continue. The logging industry had accepted this. The assumption was that wood was simply hard, steel wore down, and sharpening time was an unavoidable cost of the trade. It was simply how things were done. Joseph Buford Cox was born in 1905. By the time the Second World War ended, he was working timber in Oregon, specifically as a bullbucker, the man responsible for felling trees and bucking the trunks into workable lengths for the mill. He understood the chainsaw's limitations, the way a craftsman understands a defective tool. He had spent years fighting the scratcher chain, filing it, resharpening it, watching it fail in the middle of a cut, watching hours drain from the working day that should have gone into timber. He was not a trained engineer. He was a logger who thought like one. In the fall of 1946, Cox was out in the Oregon Coast Range, searching for salvageable wood. A series of devastating fires, known as the Tillamook Burn, had scorched vast sections of the northern Oregon forests over the previous decade, and loggers were combing through the charred land looking for usable timber. Cox brought his axe down into an old hollow stump. He stopped. Inside the stump, something was moving. A timber beetle larva, Ergates spiculatus, the western pine sawyer, roughly the size of a man's finger, was chewing through solid wood. It moved with the grain and across it without slowing. It left a clean channel of sawdust behind. It simply worked. Cox knelt down and watched for a long time. The larva's mandibles operated in opposing C-shaped arcs, left and right, alternating, each pass clearing the path for the next. It did not scratch. It did not scrape. It sheared wood fiber with almost no wasted effort. Cox took some of the larvae home to Portland. He spent the months that followed in the basement of his house on SE 33rd Avenue, studying the insects under a magnifying glass. He took notes, he made drawings, he rebuilt the problem from first principles. The question he was answering was simple to state and difficult to execute. How do you translate the geometry of an insect's jaw into a steel cutting tooth that can withstand the speed, heat, and mechanical stress of a chainsaw running at full production load? His answer was the chipper tooth, a curved cutter whose edge was angled to shear into wood fiber from the side rather than scraping down from above. The teeth alternated left and right along the chain, directly mirroring the beetle's motion. The design pulled through timber rather than fighting it. It held its edge longer than the scratcher. It was simpler to file when it did dull, and it cut wood faster than any chain the industry had seen. In November 1947, still working from his basement, Cox produced the first batch of Cox chipper chain. He had 4 employees. They worked on 2 small assembly tables. All machining was contracted out to shops with the equipment Cox did not yet own. The Oregon Saw Chain Corporation was founded that same year in Portland, Oregon, by Joseph Cox and his wife Alice. The first week, 3 chains were sold. One early employee later recalled that he had been genuinely worried about his job. Then the orders began to grow. A logger named Jack Jameson had been working with power saws since Weyerhaeuser brought steel machines into the Pacific Northwest in 1939. He was among the first men to run the Oregon chain under real working conditions, not as a test, but through a full day in the timber. What he found changed how he understood the chainsaw entirely. A single saw equipped with the new chain could replace the labor of 16 fallers and 40 buckers operating with conventional tools. Jameson developed what became known as two-way work, one man felling and bucking a tree with a chainsaw from start to finish. That kind of individual productivity had never been achievable before. With Cox's chain, it became routine. Word traveled fast through the camps and hillsides of the Northwest. In the company's first full year of operation, Oregon Saw Chain sold $300,000 worth of product. The operation was still running out of Cox's basement, still relying on outside contractors for machining, but the orders kept arriving. Loggers who had spent years accepting the scratcher chain as an unavoidable burden were now choosing something better, and they were not going back. By 1955, annual revenue had reached $7 million. The chain, assembled on 2 tables in a Portland basement, had moved into its own facility and begun reaching beyond American borders. In 1957, the company entered the foreign market. The design that began with a beetle larva in a burned-out Oregon stump was now feeding sawmills on multiple continents. The chainsaw itself was evolving. During these same years, 2-stroke engines were becoming lighter and more powerful. And as the machines improved, the chain Cox had designed became the single point of performance that every logger, every operator, and every manufacturer kept coming back to. Cox had not built dominance through marketing or distribution advantages. He built it because his chain solved a problem that every logger measured in actual dollars and actual hours. Every sharpening session the chipper tooth eliminated was time returned to the working day. Every tree that came down faster was tonnage added to a mill's output. The economics required no persuasion. This is the kind of history that rarely gets told. If you agree, hitting like takes 1 second, and it matters more than most people realize. In 1953, John D. Gray acquired the Oregon Saw Chain Corporation and reorganized it under the name Omark Industries. Cox himself had been developing separate ventures in precision casting during those years' work that would ultimately contribute to the founding of Precision Cast Parts Corporation, later one of the largest aerospace component manufacturers in North America. But the saw chain was the invention that defined his life's work, and the company he had built in that Portland basement was now positioned for a much larger stage. Under Omark, the Oregon brand expanded steadily through the 1960s and 1970s. The company added guide bars and sprockets, becoming a full system supplier to the chainsaw industry rather than simply a chain manufacturer. A logger could now walk into a dealer and buy every component of his cutting system under a single name. That kind of vertical presence in the market was not accidental. It was a strategy of depth. The deeper Oregon went into the supply chain, the harder it became for any competitor to displace it. Manufacturing capacity spread to Guelph, Canada, and then to Curitiba, Brazil. By 1980, Omark was operating across 5 countries and employing more than 4,000 people. The Oregon chain was not simply a successful product anymore. It was the backbone of the global chainsaw aftermarket. In 1981, the company recorded annual sales of $280 million. Then came pressure from the outside. The early 1980s brought a strengthening dollar that made American exports expensive in foreign markets. Omark's international business faced real headwinds. The company's leadership responded with a long-term strategy. Managers traveled to Japan to study just-in-time production methods that Japanese manufacturers had been refining for years. Omark implemented those techniques plant by plant, reducing waste and improving throughput across its global operations. The results were noticed. Business publications began citing Omark as a model of American manufacturing discipline. The company's reputation grew well beyond the saw chain industry. That reputation drew attention from exactly the kind of buyer a well-run manufacturer eventually attracts. In 1983, Winton M. Blount, a construction and manufacturing figure known throughout the South as Red Blount, was in Japan asking experts which American company had best applied the principles of lean manufacturing. The name he received was Omark Industries of Portland, Oregon. 2 years later, in 1985, Blount Inc. purchased Omark Industries in full. The company that had started in a basement with 4 employees and a single product was now a division of a diversified industrial conglomerate based in Montgomery, Alabama. The Oregon chain had traveled a long way from SE 33rd Avenue. The Oregon brand did not slow down. In 1988, Oregon chain recorded its own sales record, up 12% from the year before. In 1991, the company launched the ICS Division Industrial Cutting Systems, adapting chainsaw technology to cut concrete and masonry in construction applications, pushing the Oregon cutting principle into entirely new markets. In 1993, Blount exited construction entirely and restructured itself as a pure manufacturing operation, renaming the parent company Blount International. Acquisitions followed systematically. Windsor Forestry Tools, Frederick Manufacturing Corporation in Kansas City, adding lawnmower blades and garden equipment parts to the portfolio. Carlton Company, an established chainsaw chain manufacturer in its own right. KOX, Woods Equipment Company. Piece by piece, Blount was consolidating the cutting tools industry around the Oregon name, and the gravity of that brand kept pulling more into its orbit. In 2002, the corporate headquarters moved from Montgomery, Alabama, to Portland, Oregon, the city where Joseph Cox had bent over a basement workbench in 1946 and filed the first chipper tooth onto a length of chain by hand. In December 2015, Blount International was taken private by American Securities and P2 Capital Partners in an all-cash transaction valued at approximately $855 million. In June 2021, the company completed the logic that had been building for decades. It shed the Blount name for said. The parent company became Oregon Tool Inc., named for the brand, the product, and the city where everything had started. Later that year, in October 2021, Oregon Tool was acquired by Platinum Equity of Los Angeles. Today, Oregon Tool is the largest manufacturer of chainsaw chain in the world. The Oregon brand holds the #1 position in global chainsaw chain sale. The company employs approximately 3,300 people across 17 locations in 10 manufacturing plants spread through 5 countries. It produces chain, guide bars, sprockets, lawnmower blades, trimmer line, and battery-powered outdoor equipment. It supplies original equipment manufacturers directly and reaches end users, professional loggers, arborists, firefighters, farmers, and homeowners on every inhabited continent. The cutting geometry that Joseph Cox worked out under a magnifying glass in his Portland basement has not fundamentally changed. The chipper tooth, the alternating left-right cutters, the shearing edge that mirrored a larva's mandibles. The geometry remains the core principle behind every modern chainsaw chain manufactured anywhere in the world. Competitors have refined it. Engineers at every major brand have spent nearly 8 decades optimizing the details. But the idea itself came from a burned-out stump in the Oregon Coast Range in 1946, and it has not been replaced in principle since. It is one of those rare inventions that arrived essentially complete, not because it was simple, but because the man who developed it had looked at the problem from precisely the right angle. Joseph Buford Cox died on August 10, 2002. He was 96 years old. The 4 employees had become thousands. The basement on SE 33rd Avenue had become 10 factories on 5 continents. The $300,000 in first-year revenue had become the foundation of a global industry. The beetle knew how to cut. Cox knew how to listen to what he saw. That is what Oregon built. If this story stayed with you, there are more like it waiting on this channel. Subscribe to Iron Legacy, and we will see you in the next one.